Yeah, well, anyway, we might look at this article anyway. So I'm going to switch over to this because I just saw it this morning on Petapixel. Now, let me just see if I can move that down. Actually, no, I'll move this out of the way. No, I'll leave that there. I just saw it this morning and it said, now is the best time to be a photographer, the best time ever to be a photographer. And I thought that I'd talk to you about this because there's so much negativity out there about, you know, people saying there's no future in the industry and all this sort of stuff, and it's all doom and gloom. And I don't believe that. Look, it is hard, and I do like to talk about that with you as well. And I was tempted the other day. I was tempted the other day to have a discussion with you all because I saw the other day that someone had actually asked for a family photographer in the area that I live. Now, the funny thing was that immediately I started looking at it, and by, I think, within 15 to 20 minutes, there was around 50 people had put in recommendations for the photographer, you know, for that area. And I just thought, oh my God, you know, like, it really has got incredibly hard to get work in that aspect of it. Sometimes, like if you're dealing with baby photographers, I think there's 20,000 baby photographers locally. And I don't mean to be degrading, but they call them mums with cameras because it's often stay-home mums that have had children themselves, and then they actually photograph babies, and it's probably a good way that they can earn some extra money. But I'm glad I'm not in that market because it would be a nightmare to try and get work. But the same thing is now happening too with like family portraits and things like that, that it's becoming incredibly competitive because basically the playing field to get into this industry is a lot less than what it used to be, and that has affected people getting some of these sort of entry-level photography, like shooting family portraits and things like that. And I will talk to you in some up-and-coming videos about what I think is the best case scenario in that area and how you can get around that. And, you know, it's by offering service, offering extras like offering video. And this is where Sony particularly has such a big advantage, that you can do fusion, which is doing stills and video at the same time. And offering things like that to clients is a great way of getting extra work. And I've really found that it certainly has helped me an awful lot. And that's one area I think that if I can say to you guys to try and push yourself to give a little bit extra, because you've got to have that difference between what these so-called people are just starting in the industry offering all these family portraits for almost no money and things like that. You've got to offer excellent service and offer things like, say, well, I can give you video as well at the same time, and learn things like that, which the Sony cameras particularly are so good at, and that might give you a difference between getting work or not getting work. And it certainly has helped me with my wedding business particularly because I offer fusion, which a lot of the brides then don't have to hire a videographer. They can sort of just use what I give them as well as the photography side of it. So it certainly has helped me. And so you should think about that if you're trying to get into this industry, that it's extremely tough down the bottom end. So you have to try and think about something that can make your service different to others. Now, I can tell you video is a lot harder to learn than still photography is. And that's why a lot of people don't take up video. And that's the main reason, because you've got to learn editing, you know, and it is a lot harder. It's an awful lot harder to give really good video than it is to just go out and take a picture. And, you know, and I'm saying that as nicely as I can. I'm not talking about being an expert in photography and lighting. That takes years. But I'm saying as an entry-level photographer, it's a lot harder to offer video. And that's why usually beginners do not offer video. So this is what I'm saying to you, is that if you are trying to offer something different to get out of that bottom dwelling area, start to offer video, start to offer fusion with your work, because that will honestly make a difference with your business. It might take a while to build that up, but once you start showing that you can do this stills and video at the same time, and you can offer that as a service, you might find that it does give you a lot more opportunities than if you're just going down the photography path or down the videography path. Because to be honest, it's extremely hard to make money now if you're just doing one or the other. I really do believe the future is going to be offering both. And I think the sooner you understand that and the sooner you realise that that's the way I have to go and to start to learn it, the better off you will be. And that's why that Facebook page I set up, I've called it the Photography and Videography School, because I want to sort of bring that in where it's going to be a mix, because I do think the future is going to be more about offering a service that is a combination of the both. So Fusion is going to be a much more norm out there rather than it being at the moment where only a few people do it. I don't know many people at all that offer what I do from the one perspective of shooting stills and video at the same time, and it certainly has helped me. So, that's one of the main things that I could say to you is that it certainly would be an area that you should think about. So anyway, let's look at some of the positives about this, because it's not all doom and gloom, and there are some amazing things about being in this industry. And I thought we could just have a look at some of these. Now, I noticed Mario said just here, what do you say? Ken is a kind man that very few people understand. He's talking about the angry photographer. I prefer to get the positives of people instead of trolling their negatives. Yeah, and I think Ken does have some good points. Honestly, I think he does, but he just gets a bit carried away, with what he does, and he gets too much on the negativity side, particularly against Sony, and that's half of the problem. Basically, this article that came up this morning, I actually saw it for the first time. It's talking about now is the best time ever to be a photographer. And basically, let's go through some of these. I'm not going to read all of these, but I just want to bring up some and talk about that as well. The Panda's here as well. Hi, Panda. How are you? What is the minimum investment in equipment and staff to do Fusion? Well, I'll answer these questions at the end, David, because I'll come back and we'll talk about it because I would like to sort of discuss these questions with you. So I will come back over these questions too. This article does have an awful lot of questions, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll just pick out some that I think are relevant because, I'd like to sort of talk about the ones that I think matter particularly to me, because I did used to shoot film, so I can talk about it from that aspect as well. And let's go to the first one. Now, this is true. It's saying professional level cameras are selling far less than what we paid for one in 1980. You're talking about how much you earned in those days and how much those cameras actually are as well. And this is this can be a positive, but it can also be a negative. It can be a negative because I said before, like, the playing field now has become a lot more easier. In other words, you can buy a camera now, an entry-level camera, and that can do way more than what a really professional camera could do from, even 5 years ago. So it can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing. But let's focus on the positives here. That, when I first started photography, cameras were very expensive. I think the first digital camera that I ever used when I taught it at university, because I taught photography at university, I think it was something like a 1 or 2 megapixel camera, and it was around about $12,000 at that time. And I thought, wow, it was only a 1 megapixel. Now, I love that because I could get into digital, but you think of the price that I paid for that as compared to what you're paying for now. If you look at it as, say, against the A7 III, which is $2,000 US, incredible technology you're getting inside that camera for a very low level entry. If you're comparing it to wages now from what we were, say, earning in 1980, incredible technology that you're getting inside that camera. You're getting 4K video footage inside that, unbelievable autofocus inside that, whereas everything basically used to be manual focus. You think how much things have changed and how much it's enabled you to do. There's no way in the past I could have done, say, for instance, Fusion and stills at the same time. I just couldn't have done it. So now you can do that, and you can do that from these entry-level cameras, which is just, it's mind-blowing when you think about it. So that's basically what I'm thinking about in that first question there. Now, lower-price lenses are so much better than they used to be that it's astounding. And I think what they're talking about there too is the quality of these lenses. Now, I do love vintage lenses as well. People can also chime in on the live chat too. I do think if you're dealing with, say, lenses like the G-Master lenses and all the newer lenses that are released now, they are definitely sharper than what the older lenses are. And they have basically more technology to basically avoid light coming into the lens and all these sort of things and basically fix distortion and stuff like that. I'm not bagging the old lenses because I do still love using them, and sometimes you can get a different look by using an older type lens. I mean, I've got a Nikon 35 in there that I really love. It's a 2.8 version that I love to stick on my cameras every so often to play with it, particularly for doing manual focus. It's beautiful. But it definitely has a look, and it's nowhere near as sharp as what these newer lenses actually are. So they have improved them if you look at that as against what they used to have in these older lenses. Like autofocus now is just outstanding. They've got stabilization built inside the lenses now so that you can hold very low shutter speed. I mean, I've showed ones recently where I shot Chiara in front of this waterfall, and it was handheld, like I think it was half a second or something handheld, and the image is quite good. It's actually usable that I could sell to a client. There's no way you could have done that years ago with film and the other lenses. So, that they have made outstanding advances in lens technology, and it's just incredible. And these are the things that we forget. Another thing too, and I used to do this, and I bet a lot of you guys did as well. The third one down here is talking about film, where you can now do all your development in the light, like I am now. You can just be in a lounge room or something like that with your laptop to develop. You don't have to develop film anymore. Those chemicals used to stink. And they weren't good to even touch. I mean, they were horrible. Some people were getting skin rashes and all things like that as well. You no longer have to do that. Now, I know still people do it for fun sometimes, but it's so much healthier now and so much better for the environment that you don't have to go through all of these chemicals and things like that. And you can just do it from a laptop. You can do it on an iPad, an iPhone. These are things that are just amazing that you can do now. Another one here too is also incredible. There are many more possible ways to show your finished work. We've got things like Instagram, Facebook, 500px, Flickr. You've got all of these places now that you can share your work, where you never used to have that. The only place you could ever share your work basically was inside an art gallery or something like that. You had no hope of actually getting work that way because you just didn't have that type of thing. So just think how lucky we are. And this is why I'm trying to say to people, when you're hearing all doom and gloom all the time, it's not. We really are in an amazing time of our lives if you're with photography. And like I've said, just think about shooting Sony. How lucky are we with what Sony have given us over the last 12 months, and where we are. And I want people to think a little bit more about the positives. It's saying here that a 1,000 laptop takes the place of a 12 by 12 darkroom and thousands of dollars. It was very expensive to set up, particularly if you were dealing with developing colour film, whereas now it's so easy to do. If you need help to a question, you can just hit Google. I mean, how hard did it used to be? You used to have to spend so much money trying to buy books. You'd have to go to the library to research books or things that you had to buy, and books were really quite expensive in those days. Photography books were really expensive. You think now how you could just log online to Google, go on YouTube, go on Facebook, like my photography and videography school, ask people for help, look at what we're doing here. You can never do that. I mean, to be honest, I still do love looking through books, and I still love looking through magazines. I used to queue up like each week to buy the latest photography magazine and the latest computer magazine. I couldn't wait for that magazine to come out. Now, you don't need to do that anymore because it's instant for you, and kids particularly just do it second nature. That they immediately just go onto Google and you can find everything you need. If you have a problem with your camera, you can log online and just type that in, and you'll probably find that the answer's there somewhere. DP Review may have it in their forums. Like the forums, the information you can get from forums is incredible. Frequently asked question sites that you can just log on to when you buy a bit of gear, and it can help you find things. If you have problem with your hardware, you can contact the supplier immediately and get answers through Facebook, through their websites, through their support systems, through websites. I mean, guys, how good is all of this stuff? It's just incredible. This is one that does interest me as well. It also says, need a location? Hit Facebook and your friends can help you find one. You've even got apps. I've got apps on my phone that tell you the best places to photograph around your area or anywhere in the world. I mean, how good is that? I've got on my phone, I've got little light meters. And I showed this to Ben, we were talking yesterday. I've got this little program. He was asking me about doing color calibration on, or doing color balance with his camera. And I've got this thing, I don't know whether you're going to be able to see it, probably not, but I've got this little app called, it's ISP-EVO. Let me see if I can get it. Now that gives me the white balance in this room. I don't know whether we're going to be able to see it, but it will give me the white balance in this room. You can see there's a spectrum down the bottom, and up the top here that you can't see, yeah, I can actually just open this app up and I can put that in the camera, and I don't even have to use a light meter or whatever. You know, I mean, it's just incredible when you think about what you can do with that. Now, it's brilliant, and that's just an app, you know, and I've got ones in here that talk about posing and things like that. So I've got all of that basically on my thing here. I've also got on this where I've got all of the model releases and things like that, basically all from my phone. I mean, how lucky are we to all have this technology built in? And this is why I'm trying to say to people, you know, think about these positives when you're thinking about whinging about the industry we're in, you know. Now let me come back to this. So let's anyway go back to a couple of other things that they're saying here, because I like this. It says gear is faster, lighter and more compact than it ever was. Remember how big the old gear used to be, you know, when you were dealing with these old cameras that they were massive. I think about the D5s that I used to lug around and things like that, and now, you know, I can just basically grab this tiny little camera, you know, and this tiny little camera, which is incredibly powerful, what this has in there, and look at the size of it. Honestly, I can stick that in my pocket, and the power that you have inside these cameras is unbelievable. Now, the next one I think is really important because lighting has made great strides. It says that you can now set up a multi-light studio for under $4,000. The cost of the pack and head, that was the cost of the pack and the head a few years ago. And you think about that, what the price of these were, say, you know, 5 years ago to set up a whole studio with multiple lights. You can use something like Godox and set that up for really quite a reasonable amount now as compared to setting up a fortune. And it's also talking about, you may not realise how incredible it is to have lights with built-in batteries. Because remember, we never used to have that. The first Pro Photo light that I used to have had this massive battery pack that you used to have to carry around and a separate head. Whereas now it's all built inside the actual light. And Godox have that. All these other light manufacturers now have that. So you don't need to be lugging around these huge battery packs anymore. Again, you know, it's so amazing to have that sort of thing. It's saying here we no longer have to carry 3 different bags of film, like 100 ISO, 400 ISO, 800 ISO. I remember that I used to have to do that, depending on whether you were shooting low light or not. You used to have to carry around different ISOs, film, to get it to work. I mean, how good now are cameras also at shooting ISO? You know, you think about that now, what we can shoot at now, easily 6400, 128,000 ISO you can get on these cameras if you need to. You know, it's just nuts when you think about how good now these cameras have actually got and the type of shooting that we can shoot in without really having much of a problem with noise. And even if you have to show noise, at least you can still grab the image. And I can tell you, I've had some accidents before too where I've been shooting. I've done it twice. When I was shooting film and I didn't realise there was no film in the camera. Luckily it wasn't a wedding. We had a beautiful bridge open up here and we had to walk across the bridge. It was open for the day before it opened and I'm shooting away, going like crazy, and there was no film in it. We also had a flood that I wanted to get some photographs of, and I shot away for a few hours, got home and I realised there was no film in the camera. You know, being able to look at that image immediately on the back of the camera, again, what a fantastic thing to actually have, you know, and you could never do that before. And that can be a negative and positive because, remember, we're talking about, I'm just going to switch this so hopefully it won't lose the signal again. You think about that was a main thing that stopped a lot of people from going into the industry, was because you really had to know your craft. When you were shooting film, particularly in a wedding, there was no way you could do that without having a great knowledge of light meters and exposure. And how lucky are we that we can look at the back of the actual camera, you know, to see that image that we've just taken, to see exposure that we've basically just taken. I mean, you know, particularly with the mirrorless cameras, I mean, how good is it to be able to look through the EVF, to use the back of the camera? I mean, it's just brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, people are saying I'm back, and I think what it is, it's when I switch cameras, it seems to drop out, I think. So I'm going to leave it on this and just see if it does it again. Let's have a look at a couple of other things that it's talking about here. What about the cost? It's saying, you know, how much did film used to cost? And it's interesting, like when you used to go somewhere and you're shooting 12 or 24 film, you know, and you used to do weddings and you might give 100 shots. You know, it's just laughable now that you think you're shooting, you know, 1,000, 2,000 images. Like, it's taken that pressure off. And you did always used to sweat when you were shooting weddings in case if something was wrong. You know, like now you don't have to worry about that because you know you've got dual cards in your camera. You know, if one card fails, that it will go to the second card. These are all things that you think about and how good they actually are now compared to what it used to be. You know, and I just want to sort of have you think about that as well. So let's open it up to some questions because I'm just curious to see what some of you think about this. Heath said here, and I did discuss this before, that he's loving the Moser Aircross gimbal with his 55mm 1.8, and I did discuss that before, that I adore that gimbal myself. It's what I use all the time, particularly with the A7 III and the A9 and the 55. It's just fantastic the way that combination works. I have just ordered the Crane M because I'm going to be using this. And I wanted a very light solution for that. So, you know, that's fantastic. So I thought that I'd get that for this. So I'm going to have multiple. I'm a bit of a gimbal junkie. I'd love to try the Rowan S. I'd love to give that a go, but that's probably going to be too heavy for me. But I would love to try the Rowan S as well sometime just to give it a go. But I do love the Moser Aircross, that's for sure. I love this too. The Essential Light said, "You're a wise man." Well, thank you so much. I don't know about that, but I just like to always think, if I can, to think positive. And, you know, I just hear so much negativity lately around it all. And I think we do have to be positive. But I do think you're going to have to think about what I discussed early on in this talk about that you need to try and offer extra things to stop you trying to compete with the bottom dwellers, you know, that you've really got to offer extras. And like I said to you, particularly if you're shooting Sony, it's easier to do that. That I really think you all should try and master a little bit of video too, to offer extra things. What else? Now, David said, well, it's hard to say, David. David has actually said here, what is the minimum investment in equipment and stuff to do fusion? Well, I can tell you what I really think you do need as a minimum. A7 III probably is the cheapest you can go into to get something that will do it really well. Because you think about that, you can get that for $2,000. So that's a great system for that price. And probably, to be honest, I think the best lens that you could get, as long as you don't get one that has autofocusing issues, is to get something like the Tamron 28-75. That's a perfect combination, and you could just get by with using that lens because that camera will give you that camera and that lens will give you the ability to almost shoot macro. It gives you that 75mm in the long end, and if you're doing fusion, you can use clear image zoom and get around about 150mm or whatever it is. As well, using that without really any loss of detail. That, you know, it works fantastic. So that's one way you could get around the whole thing. You obviously need to buy a cheap microphone though, which you'll need to get. And I've got a lot of this stuff listed in my Amazon links down below. You'll be able to see that. Something like the Rode Video Micro is fantastic. So you could set yourself up probably for a minimum, I'd say around about $3,000. You could get quite a good setup that would get you by. But that's only having one camera and one lens and one off-camera mic. So you would have to think about then having backup solutions as well. But as a minimum, I think I'd probably go for something like the A7 III, the Tamron 28-75, which gives you that nice wide focal range. And it's also a 2.8 lens. that is reasonably cheap, because that's around, what's $800 US. And then use the other bit of money there to buy something like a Video Micro as well. So that would get you into a good system, David. So that would be probably what I'd say to get started. What else have we got? Mask is saying, is he late? No. Stephen said, I agree. I took pictures for many years. Happy with the smartphone. Then I recently bought an entry-level camera and got a photo editing software. It changed my life. Exactly, Stephen. You know, it is amazing what you can do with a still camera. I mean, honestly, these cameras are really quite good. Do you love my screensaver? She's so hot. These cameras are just so amazing. I mean, they really are amazing if you're dealing with just using it for normal light scenarios. They're terrible if you go into low light. But if you're dealing with just carrying it around and taking photos, the new smartphones are particularly really quite good. The only thing you miss, I suppose, is the depth of field. They have the simulated depth of field, which looks quite good. It doesn't match what you'll get with the digital SLR, but I'm telling you, they're getting better and better. So they are really quite good. They're not going to compete at this stage, though, with digital SLRs and mirrorless, but they are quite good. But yeah, you're right. Once you get into photo editing software, it does change your life. I agree with you. Mario said, nice topic. Thanks, Mario. I'm glad you appreciate that. Chris said, the image, the quality and ease or all over... The quality and ease all over photography is great now. No film and developers, no dark rooms. Oh, okay, you're saying it's a lot easier because you don't have dark rooms and development and all that sort of stuff. Digital is so much better. Yeah, and it is. Like I said, it has leveled the playing field a little bit, but it's also made it better for us as well. I mean, I love being able to check exposure and do things like that before I take the shot. It really has changed the way that I work. I mean, it's fantastic. And like I've said, you used to have to buy separate video cameras and separate still cameras, you know, that they had to be both different cameras. Whereas now, honestly, something like an A7 III is probably better than paying a few $1,000s for some of the other cameras that are out there, you know. So it's amazing technology that you're dealing with. That, you know, it's let you do sort of things like that. Altric saying, what size laptops is everyone using? I've got a 15-inch MacBook Pro, Altric. Jim Penn has said he's got a 17-inch MacBook. He's got a 17-inch MacBook. I do nearly all my editing, though, on my Mac Pro, so I'm nearly always doing it on that. But I also have a MacBook Pro that I use in the house, but I don't really edit on that. Kerry tends to use that for her photos, but I'm using it all here on my Mac Pro, so that's the thing that I'm using. And it's interesting too, because Ralph here has said, sometimes I get the feeling people just like to moan, and you know what? And I agree with you, sometimes they do. The worst place for this too can be online. We were talking about you can get information and everything online. You can also get a stack of people that hate as well. You only have to sort of see, I think Matt Granger talked about it in his latest video that he just put out. I watched it this morning, actually, where he was talking about the Sony 400mm f2.8. He was saying the amount of hate, you know, that came out about that was ridiculous. And it really is polarizing. Like, it's really interesting because you'll get the haters that hate Sony, and they will just bag it no matter what Sony do. And like I said, I hate that negativity, and that's why the happy photographer pops up every so often. What else have we got? Eddie said, hi David, I know you are using Final Cut Pro for editing. Do you do a course to use the software? No, I don't. But I will occasionally bring it up and show how I edit and things like that. I have done that before, but I probably will do that again. And that might be somewhere where I do a live YouTube, or I might even do that live on the photography and videography school. I'm also thinking about setting up a Patreon page as well, and that could be something where I could do things like that to a select number of people who are interested in it. So that could be something that I could come up with later on. But I do love Final Cut. Yeah, I did go for Premiere for a while, but I didn't really like it. I much prefer the way that Final Cut works. Altric said in here that I have the 2012 15-inch MacBook Pro, looking to upgrade, but wondering if I should wait for the new ones to come out. Well, I would, because there's rumours that they're going to have new ones coming out soon, Altric. So I certainly wouldn't be upgrading that. I'd be waiting at this stage. I love this. Jim Penn said there are apps where you can get the nearest stubby or the location of the nearest brick wall. Mario said, are you using any Sigma lenses? No, but I've got a meeting on Tuesday that I'm hoping allows me to get that for you to actually review some of these lenses. So I have got a meeting with the Australian supplier of that on Tuesday. So I'm hoping that I've got some things that will come up on that. But I obviously have to have this meeting to make sure it's okay for both of us, because there's no way I'll be giving unbiased reviews. So I sort of have to have the ability to give an honest review, or I wouldn't do it. So I'll let you know how that goes after I've had the meeting. It might take then a couple of weeks or whatever to get everything organised after that. But I'm having a meeting on Tuesday, because I've said to you before that I would love to try the 105 and I would love to try the 135 lens. I'm dying to give those a go. And I'd love to be able to say compare, say the 85mm, the 105 and the 135mm on the same shoot, say grabbing Chiara and then trying the same shot and then showing you a comparison about how they look. Now remember, I want to base my images on how it would be used for my business and the way that I shoot. This is why I'm saying I don't want to shoot brick walls. So you're not going to see that if you're looking at my review. You're going to see it from a real perspective of using it as a portrait photographer. So I really do hope that that's going to be able to be done. The other thing too, they also have a whole stack of other hardware. They're also the Pro Photo Agent, so I might be able to even get some more in that area, and also a stack of other hardware. So it's pretty exciting. So I'm really hoping something good comes up with that. What else have we got? Buffering again. I like the pop-up text, David. Yeah, I know, it looks good, that pop-up text, doesn't it? Let's have a look at this, because Jim said, in 1992, a 4 megabyte memory stick cost US $3,000. So a single A7 series RAW is about 48 megabytes. So it would cost US $36,000 in store to store one RAW image. I know. Can you remember those massive big hard drives that they used to use, you know, that were about $100,000 and they were 40 megabytes or some ridiculous figure? You think about what we've got now is just unbelievable, you know, and it really is incredible when you think about that sort of thing. Gerald said, as a pro shooter for more than 4 decades, it is so much easier to make great art now. I can't ever imagine how we made our living with film and only manual focus and bulky flash. I know. Remember those little flash things that we used to put on top of the camera, and they go boom, and you used to have to buy them, and they were all in a row, and you sort of had to move them over, and then the next one would flash. I mean, how lucky are we with what we've got now? And, you know, remember this next time you think, oh, it's all doom and gloom. Just think how lucky we are to be able to do what we do. Like I said, just for me alone, having autofocus, lens stabilization, the EVF, just amazing. Stephen Myers said, new cameras are astounding, and they are, and they're getting better and better. I mean, I can't wait to see what the A7S III is going to give us. I'm dying to see what Sony offer us with that one. Oh, Rui, this is interesting. Rui actually said, finally got my A7 III. You got 2 of them. One for me and one for my wife. Aren't you nice, Rui? You've looked after your wife. That's fantastic. So Little Ray Blue said, David, could you do a video on how to do Fusion? Yeah, I'd like to do that. I did have some images a while ago which were interesting that I'll have to try and show you. I have started to take some pictures to show you, because you'll laugh, because I'm holding the 2 cameras in my hand, one with the still obviously, and the other one is the gimbal, and you'll laugh when you look at the photos. All right, so if you look at it, through here, you can see that I'm holding, and imagine trying to do this with the large digital SLRs a few years back. You can see here that I'm holding one camera there, and I've also got the gimbal in my hand on this side. So this is how I'm actually working, you know, and basically that's what I'm doing for the whole time. So you can see here that that's the way I'm doing Fusion now. People look at me and they laugh because they see me walking around with two cameras, holding it with one hand. Now, stabilization allows me to get away with doing this. So this is one way that I can do it, and and it's fantastic. And I've got a stack of these because I'm going to talk about these, and I thought it might be a great way that I can talk about adding Fusion. So this is going to come up in a video coming along soon. So I'll let you know when that happens. But yeah, that's that anyway. Hopefully it's not going to kick us off. So that's basically how they'll do that. So you laugh because it is just two cameras together. So I will do Fusion stuff, yes, coming up as well. What else have we got? Mario has said in here, one thing though is that gear is too expensive. Able cameras should be priced like the Nikon D5600. Well, they're not dear if you compare how they were compared to what we were earning in those days, Mario. It was a lot more expensive in those days to get camera. Like I said, when I had that other one, that digital camera years ago, it was around $12,000 and it was a 1 megapixel camera. And we weren't earning anywhere near the type of money that we were earning now. So trust me, if you talk about it compared to what we were earning in those days to what the cameras cost, we are way better off now than what we were then. So Moment said, David got an A7R3, 85mm, 55 1.8. What do you recommend as a second camera for wedding photography? My second at the moment is a Canon 70D and the 28-70. Should I upgrade to A7R2 or the A7 III? It's too hard, I think. I tried to do it for a while to be running the GH5 and the Sony cameras, and I found it was way too much, particularly if you're doing weddings, to be going between multiple different systems. It's too hard because the menu systems are different, the controls are different, it's not good. To be honest, if you've already got the A7R3, I definitely wouldn't be buying the A7R2. I'd get the A7 III as the backup. You don't need another massive resolution camera. You've already got one, so I'd keep the A7R3 obviously, and then get the A7 III as your backup camera. That would be the way that I'd go, definitely, and that will be a fantastic combination. If you were doing weddings, I'd even say the perfect combination is two A7 IIIs. But you can't go wrong with what you've got too, because you can also use the A7R3 in crop mode if you wanted to as well, and you'll get roughly an 18-19 megapixel file size, so that will give you a great combination there. You've got the 85 and the 55. You're going to need a wider angle lens though, so you will need something 35 or even a 16-35. I use the 16-35 f4. So that's the one that I'm using all the time for my wedding, for my wide stuff. And I've even used too the 10-18. I use that quite often as well, because full frame you can use that at 12 to 16, and it works fantastic full frame. Or just, like I said, get the f4 version of the 16-35. The beauty is that because the ISO works so well on these cameras now, you don't have to have the 2.8 version. If you can't afford the 2.8 version, just get the f4 version and you'll be happy. I use it all the time without any issues at all. Photomeic said this. He actually said Final Cut all day. He also said that he used to use Premiere as well, and I was the same. And I really do prefer it much more than using Final Cut. Barry's just saying hi. Jim Penn said the dithering is from the beer. Brett said happy birthday again. Thank you, Brett. Altric said he has a friend that already got the Sigma 105. Yeah, but it'll be the Canon version or the Nikon version, Altric. It won't be the Sony version. That's not released yet. The Sony version is coming out. Well, I might find out Tuesday. Michael said here, and this is a good point too, I try not to worry about others too much when it comes to competition. There'll always be worse and better photographers. I'm here to stay. It's about servicing clients. It's not a marathon. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Yeah, and that's true. Remember, at the end of the day, and this is why I get people contacting me all the time about whinging about other photographers in the same area charging a lot less money. And I do say to people, why do you worry about that? Because that's not in your control. You have no control about what other photographers in your area are going to offer their clients. You just can't fight that, because no matter what you do, there's always going to be beginning photographers coming into the market. There'll always be photographers that are struggling and offer less than you. All you can do is do the best you can and offer the best service that you can actually offer. If you do that, you will always get people that will come to you. Remember, there are always people that value service. Brett said, I am very happy with my A7 III. Now, no need to update any cameras for at least the next 5 years. I keep saying that, but I usually upgrade the second another one comes out. So, what else have we got? Now, this is another thing you've got to be careful with too. I get these all the time. Online services, particularly for weddings and things like that. Honestly, do not use those services. 99.9% of the time, you're better off just to use word of mouth. And trust me, word of mouth is way more important than paying for these wedding things that you see online. I get them every week contacting me about, oh yeah, but we'll put you up in our search engines, we'll do this. I tried it once and didn't get a thing out of them, and I was paying this monthly rate. And then the only time I'd ever get some work out of them was just about when the yearly thing was just about to renewed again. I'd get a couple of quotes. Honestly, use word of mouth. Word of mouth and share like things on Facebook, on Instagram will get you way more work than any of these sites where they do stuff like that on. What's Michael saying? Michael's saying from... $10 for Michael Maestro Pierce from Ken by Fuji. I'm not sure what that means, Michael. $10 from Michael Maestro from Ken by Fuji. I love it. So Nathan said, any tips with getting started doing off-camera single flash portraits using the A7 III and Godox? I recently picked up the 85 and 1.8, went to learn more, coming primarily from landscapes. A pity you're not in Melbourne, because I'm doing a workshop in August about that. You probably are better, honestly. I do a lot of it online, so a lot of my sites, videos that I post will show that. But if not, if you don't sort of see it there, I will probably try and do some others like that eventually. You're often better off to do a good workshop with someone that is good. What were you saying? That's genius? Fanamik, I'm curious, what was that you were talking about? That's genius, David. I'm interested to know what you actually mean there. You're talking about the holding the two cameras? Yeah, that's the way that I work. So if that's what you're talking about, you should see the laughs that I get with people because I'm holding the two cameras and working with one go like that. So let me know if that's what you're talking about, Fanamiak. I'd be curious to know. Gerald has said, David, with the quality and compactness of the gear, you and I could be cracking stubbies with one hand and shooting photos with the other. That's another thing I should do, isn't it? Cracking a stubby in one hand, holding the camera with the other one. I love it. Oh, God, I love it. Gerald said, I have both the A7R III and the A7 II and find I'm using the A7 III more on most of my work. I'm the same. Like, I very rarely use my A7 II. I just love the file size of the A7 III. And for most of my work, it's easily enough. So I'll probably, I don't know if I'll ever buy another A7R III version. I probably would buy a new A9 or a new A7S III. When that comes out, I'll probably definitely buy that. Photomiak says he likes the all-in-one feel that Final Cut Pro provides. Premiere makes you have to get After Effects and learn that program just to do some of the stuff you can do with, and I agree. And I just found it works far better, like less processor intensive. You can use 4K footage way easier in Final Cut and play in real time than what you can with Premiere. But obviously, if you haven't got a Mac, well, then you just can't use Final Cut. So you have to have a Mac to use it that way. Inquisitive said, how difficult is it to focus with the Loxia lenses? Well, I can tell you, if it's anything like the Voigtlanders, not a problem at all with these good screens. It might be worse, though, with the A7 III because the screen's just not as good. But with the A9 and the A7R III, it would be fantastic. You can notice a difference with manual focusing with the A7 III is just not as good. Eric said, I love watching your channel. Yesterday, finally received my A7 III. 55 1.8, and today I'll play with it the first time. Next lens may be the Sigma 35 1.4 or Sony 85 1.8. Keep up the great work. Well, if you've got the 55, you may be better to get the 35, Eric. You probably will need something a little bit wider, so that's probably what I'd be getting. Oh, it does. It comes up with $10, so I can see it. Yeah, that's how I can tell. Okay, so now I know. So Zoe Moments said, another question. Should I buy the 2470 f4 plus 50mm 1.8 for £815 second hand over the 16 to 35 f4 brand new, or just go for the 16 to 35 f4? The second 50mm is for the A6500 for video. Well, I wouldn't get the 2470 f4, to be honest. I don't really like that lens. I have that and I wouldn't recommend it. I'd get the Tamron lens any day over that one. So I think if you were sort of spending money, I seriously would not buy the 2470 f4. I'd get the 16 to 35 f4 before I bought that one, or a prime lens or something like that. I certainly wouldn't buy that one though. Stay away from the 2470 f4. Get the Tamron. Get the Tamron, and then you sort of covered yourself for the same type of money. I'd get the 28 to 75. Any day over that one. Let me just come back up here where we were. Now, Gerald's saying, because someone asked him about why he uses the A7 III as his main camera and he's using the A7R III as his backup camera. He's actually saying here because it saves me editing and post-processing. And that's the thing that I've found. That's why I love the 24 megapixel file size so much, guys, because the thing is that the 24 megapixel file size, I really think, is the perfect file size, particularly for events and really almost any photography that you can do out there. Unless you're doing landscapes or you really want to crop in, 24 megapixel is ample. And then you're not having to have this massive storage and tie up your computer, because it does take a lot longer to process those massive files. When you open up those 42 megapixel files in Photoshop and you start creating layers and doing multiple layers, you better have a good machine to actually do that, or it slows down to a grounding halt. If you're doing it in Lightroom and you're starting to do corrections and things like that, like add corrections with your color and adding white balance corrections and things like that, through add filters and stuff, like, it slows it all down. It's way better to be using 24 megapixel unless you need that file size. Like if you're doing studio work and you need high-end retouching, well then obviously you could use the A7R II or the A7R III, and I still do. But to be honest, I'm nearly always now using the A9 and the A7 III. Yeah, Photomix said, yes, the way you hold the cameras. I know, it's a classic when you see me holding both of these cameras. Photomix, everyone, like I said, everyone laughs, but it works fantastic, and it gives me the ability to do unbelievable fusion. It really does. And like I've said, you need a camera with stability, and that's where it's great having the in-camera stability, the IBIS. It works fantastic, and the cameras are light enough that I can just hold them up in one hand, and it's not straining me. Like if I was lugging around my D4S like I used to do that in the D810, I couldn't have done it. There's no way that I could have actually have done fusion like I did with that. Michael said that the A9 is really getting to a nice price on eBay. What are they offering it for, Michael? Just curious. Altrix said also that he's thinking about getting another A9. I don't think I'd have two of them. I think I'd have the A7 III. I think the perfect combination is the A9 and the A7 III if you're doing events, or the A7R III and the A7 III is a perfect combination. Any of those are a perfect combination. I do still think the A9 is the best wedding event camera that there is out there. The funny thing was, I was just watching this morning that there was a new video on Wedding Film School, and there was a guy shooting, I think it was Nikon or Canon, I don't know, in the ceremony in the church, and I just went, oh my God. All I could hear was bang, bang, clacker, clacker, clacker as he was taking the shots. And it's funny now, because I've got so used to shooting the A9 where there's no noise at all, I found that really distracting, and it was really interesting. Scott McKenna is now doing the Wedding Film School. He's taken over from Craig, and his latest video did it. Watch it and you'll understand what I mean. And all it was doing was going clacker, clacker, clacker as they were in this Catholic church. And it was so annoying because now I'm just used to it having no noise at all. And I thought that was really interesting. Eddie said, how long did it take you to master Final Cut Pro? Not that long, Eddie, really. There's plenty of courses online that you can do. But I found really it's quite intuitive. But I picked it up pretty easily. I do learn things pretty quickly, though. Photomiac also said, yes, allows me to edit 4K footage without much of an issue. And that's right, it does. Final Cut is incredible for editing 4K footage. It really is amazing. And you can edit it in real time and there's no lag. You don't lose frames. It doesn't drop frames. Things like that as well. So at Moments said, 42 megapixel is really not hard to edit as much as people say. Get a CPU with high clocks. Yeah, and that's what you have to do. You just have to have something that's quite powerful and also a decent amount of storage as well. I just find the 24 megapixel is just the perfect size for me, though. Dogs. Dave Clark said dogs will win a premiership. That's our local football team. I don't think so, Dave. They've won the one. That's it. Cameraman said, I wonder how the Final Cut Pro handles the 5K footage from the GH5. I used to do it. It was no problem at all. Chris just said he just posted a sweet photo of a nice motorcycle on the photography Facebook group. Look forward to seeing it. Dimitri said, how many photo edits do you offer for weddings? 20. So they get 20 fully edited images. On the highest package, which is the $10,000 one, they get 40. So on my middle package, the $4,000 one, they're getting 20 of their favourite pics edited. All the images get light editing. That's why I do, though, try and get the images correct as possible in camera. But then they get sort of high edited pictures as well. Have any of you purchased profiles out there for your Sony like Canon profiles? Now, I don't need them. I'm happy with the Sony colour. I'm really happy with how Sony looks on these cameras. So, yeah, there's no reason for me to do that. Dimitri also said, what's a good time frame to complete wedding photo edits? I tell them 9 weeks from the date of the wedding. They'll get their images. So it takes 9 weeks for me. That's only to get the initial images, though. They'll then go away and choose the ones that they want, and then I'll create albums and do other things like that. But 9 weeks to get their original images I give. I have to give a timeline because during the wedding season, I'm doing weddings all the time. I have to have enough time to do the turnaround, so as well as do all my other stuff. So I tell people a minimum of 9 weeks to get their images. Comet Fish said, hey David, you're the reason my dad bought an A7 III and gave me his old Canon. Not sure if that's a good or bad thing. No, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with Canon, Comet Fish. Nothing wrong with Canon at all. Viva Valley said, David, do you shoot video for weddings as well? Yeah, and we talked about that before. I don't shoot videos solely, though. No. I'm only doing Fusion. And I'm only giving a 3 to 5 minute highlight. So I'm not giving a doco edit or anything like that, and I'm charging $1,200 to do that. If they want any more than that, I'm actually saying to people that they have to hire a full-on videographer. But that doesn't happen much nowadays. To be totally honest, most people are just happy enough with me being able to just offer that 3 to 5 minute video, and they love that. If you go back, you'll see them, because you'll actually see them if you scroll back through my video, some of the Fusion videos that I actually post. Don't look at the slideshows, but if you look at the Fusion video, if you go back far enough, you'll see them. I was going to do the live wedding editing thing to show you the wedding, and I might do that Monday, I think. I think I'm just going to post one of Kiara tomorrow, which is a low-key studio shoot that you might be interested in seeing as well. So I'll put that wedding one up probably Monday. I'll do a live and take you through that last wedding that I did. That's about it, guys. So that'll be all for now. Have a great day. Oh, the panda's just back just as about as I'm leaving the panda. So have a great weekend, guys. I'm heading down the coast tomorrow too, so I might even do a live from down there, just going out with the family. Looking forward to it. So that'll be all for now. Thanks for the great long chat, guys. I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.